This story is titled, "My Parents Only Remembered I Existed When They Needed Money. So I funded my sister's wedding, but my speech left them in tears." Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I am a 32-year-old man and the eldest child of my parents, who own a business in the healthcare sector. Both of them were deeply involved in running the company, which essentially meant that I grew up without much parental involvement. Throughout my childhood, I rarely experienced any close bonding moments with them, as I was primarily raised by nannies. At the time, my parents were still young and had little interest in taking on the full responsibilities of parenthood. Instead, they indulged in an extravagant lifestyle, often spending beyond their means. However, thanks to the substantial inheritances they both possessed, they always had financial security despite their reckless spending habits. When I was 8 years old, my parents welcomed my younger sister, Emma. Her arrival made it painfully clear that their lack of attention toward me was not simply a consequence of their busy schedules. It was because they didn't find me compelling enough to prioritize. Over time, I came to understand several reasons for this. I was an ordinary-looking boy with average intelligence, quiet by nature, and only spoke when spoken to. Emma, on the other hand, was exactly the kind of child my parents wanted to showcase in their business and social circles. She had striking features, golden curls and bright blue eyes, and naturally drew attention, even as a toddler. Her presence allowed my parents to present the image of a picture-perfect family, something they clearly valued. Despite Emma receiving all the special treatment, I cannot claim to have had a difficult life. I was fortunate enough to attend prestigious private schools and later a renowned university. However, the emotional neglect I experienced drove me to work tirelessly to earn respect and success. I pushed myself to excel academically, eventually securing a well-paying job and advancing in my career as quickly as possible. Although I remained in contact with my parents, the wounds of their indifference never truly healed. Unlike me, Emma, the favored child, was never encouraged to develop a strong work ethic. She was an average student at best, but since our parents pampered her excessively, she never had to push herself. Her poor academic performance led her to drop out after high school, yet instead of facing consequences, she was simply given a role at our family business. Even then, she barely showed up, and when she did, she worked only for a few hours. Her colleagues dreaded her presence due to her frequent outbursts, and I often heard stories about her tantrums and workplace drama from friends and extended family members. What hurt me the most, however, was my parents' attempt to hide the truth from me. After I had established myself professionally, I visited them, expecting to have an honest discussion with Emma about her work habits. I thought a direct conversation at a family level might help her improve professionally. But when I arrived, she wasn't even there. My parents, rather than admitting the reality, went so far as to claim that she was managing nearly half the company. It was then that I realized they were subtly comparing our achievements, trying to paint her as equally, if not more, accomplished than me. That was when it truly hit me. My parents saw me as the child who thrived independently, while Emma was the one they had actively raised. The idea that I had outperformed the daughter they had personally nurtured was likely an embarrassment to them. By the time I was 19, I was excelling in university, whereas at the same age, Emma was partying without direction. This pattern continued over the years. She continued to rely on our parents while I steadily climbed the ranks in my career. Though I never fully understood the root cause, my relationship with Emma gradually became strained. As her older brother, I sympathized with her struggles. Almost everyone, except our parents, compared her life to mine, pressuring her to follow in my footsteps. But that was never what she wanted. To compensate for these expectations, our parents indulged her even further, granting her unearned promotions and fulfilling her every demand. What troubled me most was how Emma was growing up without taking responsibility for her actions. I wanted to step in and offer guidance, but I no longer had a place in her life. My parents had already distanced me, as my presence at social events and family gatherings overshadowed Emma. She preferred it that way too. Eventually, I built my own social circle in the city where I lived, separate from my family's world. 2 years ago, I crossed paths with my wife, Danielle. She worked in the fashion industry, an area I had never imagined myself being connected to in any way. My sense of style was practically non-existent, which is why it still amazes me that a woman with such an impeccable taste in fashion fell for me. Her presence in my life transformed the way I carried myself, boosting my confidence in ways I hadn't anticipated. Strangely enough, the emotional void left by my parents, which had remained unfilled since my early years, started to heal after she became part of my life. With Danielle, I discovered aspects of my personality I never knew existed, so it wouldn't be an overstatement to say that she is the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me. After a year of dating, we made the decision to get married. Since we both had a small circle of close friends and family, we opted to make our wedding an extravagant affair. We settled on a destination wedding, and after countless discussions, research, and deliberation, we ultimately chose Venice as our venue. I won't get into all the intricate details of the ceremony, but we covered all expenses for our guests, ensuring they had top-tier accommodations and a memorable experience. At some point, Emma asked if I could arrange travel and accommodation for her boyfriend as well, and I readily agreed, though Danielle had advised me to reconsider. Throughout the wedding, I couldn't ignore the envy in Emma's expression. She spent much of the event being comforted by our mother, while my parents, though clearly impressed by the lavishness of the occasion, remained reserved in their reactions. Even before the wedding, they had dodged every attempt I made to arrange a family dinner with Danielle, and that pattern continued after we were married. Eventually, I stopped trying. Around that time, I also learned that my parents had been speaking negatively about me behind my back. They told people that I had taken advantage of their wealth to complete my education and secure a job, only to abandon them in their old age. My father even went so far as to say that he wouldn't leave me a cent of his inheritance. It was my aunt, my father's sister, who had always been on my side, who warned me about what was being said. I won't pretend that it didn't sting. Losing one's family, no matter how strained the relationship, is never easy. Danielle was my rock through that difficult period. A few months ago, I found out that Emma was planning her wedding. My aunt informed me that she had been mesmerized by my wedding and wanted something just as grand. She even pushed her boyfriend to propose so she could orchestrate an extravagant ceremony in Tuscany. However, both she and her fiancé were financially struggling, so she turned to our parents for funding. As expected, they were more than happy to oblige, but a wedding in Tuscany was beyond their means. After some back and forth, they convinced her to settle for Hawaii instead. During the entire planning process, neither my parents nor my sister thought to include me in any way. I even met up with them once while all of this was going on, yet they made no mention of it. At that point, I accepted the reality that I wasn't going to be invited to Emma's wedding. Then, unexpectedly, my parents extended an invitation to Danielle and me for dinner at their home. This was the first time they had ever invited Danielle over, so I foolishly assumed it was a step toward repairing our fractured relationship. The dinner itself went smoothly, but once it ended, my parents revealed their true intentions. They explained that their business had suffered heavy financial losses and that they were facing a looming lawsuit. As a result, they could no longer afford to cover Emma's wedding expenses. However, they were determined not to disappoint their beloved daughter, which was why they had invited me over, to ask me to fund the wedding in their place. I was seething inside, realizing that the dinner wasn't about making amends, but about using me to ensure Emma's happiness. Without even discussing it with Danielle, I agreed, but with two conditions. First, I would have complete control over the wedding arrangements. Second, I would deliver a speech on the wedding day. My parents were slightly taken aback, as I had never been one to make speeches, but they didn't question it since I was helping them maintain their precious daughter's reputation. Unlike my wedding, which was intimate, Emma's ceremony was packed with people. Friends, extended relatives from both sides of the family, and numerous acquaintances were all in attendance. This was my golden opportunity to finally express everything I had kept bottled up for years, exactly why I insisted on giving that speech. Today was the big day, Emma's wedding. As expected, she wasn't pleased with how everything had been arranged. Our tastes were worlds apart, so I knew that no matter what choices I made, she would find something to complain about. But none of that mattered to me. My purpose today wasn't to impress anyone, it was to deliver my speech. When the time came, I turned to Danielle and asked her to record it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying through the hall, "I want to start by expressing my gratitude to my parents for allowing me to speak today." A flicker of confusion passed between my parents as they exchanged glances. They had assumed my speech would revolve around Emma, not them. For years, I continued, I was overlooked. My parents never truly supported me or showed me the love and affection they so freely gave my sister. Yet now, when they need something from me, they suddenly remember my existence. An uneasy hush fell over the crowd as the weight of my words sank in. My parents sat stiffly, clearly embarrassed, while Emma's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. But don't misunderstand me, I added with a smile. I hold no resentment. In fact, I'm grateful. This wedding has given me the chance to demonstrate just how far I've come, how much I've achieved. And I must say, it feels incredible. I went on to share my experiences growing up in a household where I was treated as an afterthought while my sister was put on a pedestal. Despite my accomplishments, the scars of that neglect had never fully faded. My parents remained silent, their faces flushed with shame as I laid bare my truth. When I finished, I walked over to Emma, pulling her into a genuine embrace. I truly wish you all the happiness in the world, I told her sincerely. May you have a wonderful life with your husband. Then, without another word, I took Danielle's hand and left the reception, leaving my family behind. Back in my hotel room, I sat in quiet satisfaction. My parents had always portrayed themselves as the perfect, devoted caregivers, an image that was central to their standing in our community. Today, I finally had the opportunity to expose the reality behind that illusion. However, a lingering sense of guilt gnawed at me. Had I done the right thing by using Emma's wedding as the stage for my truth? Had I ruined her special day? Update 1. Just before midnight, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Emma stood there, tears streaming down her face. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug, and before I knew it, I was crying too. Danielle quietly stepped out to give us privacy. Through her sobs, Emma confessed that she had never truly understood my side of the story. She had assumed I had simply been distant, indifferent to the family, never realizing that our parents had actively fueled that distance. From the time she was young, they had made cutting remarks about me, shaping her perception of me in a negative light. I apologized for overshadowing her wedding day, but she surprised me by saying she didn't hold it against me. In fact, she admitted that our parents had brought it upon themselves. It was, without a doubt, the most heartfelt conversation we had ever shared. Update 2. A week has passed since the wedding. I left Hawaii without seeing my parents again, but today, my mother reached out. She informed me that Emma had completely cut off communication with my father. My speech had struck a chord with her, and she couldn't bring herself to forgive him. My father, however, had an entirely different reaction. He found my speech offensive and disrespectful, and had decided to sever all ties with me. When Emma learned of this, she was furious and stopped speaking to him altogether. Now my mother was pleading with me to step in and fix the situation, saying it was causing her immense distress. Update 3. Yesterday, I did something I never imagined I would do. I gathered the entire family for dinner. I wanted everyone to finally confront these issues head-on. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was at the center of a family discussion, not as an outsider, but as someone leading the way toward reconciliation. I spoke openly with my father about the pain his actions had caused. Though he was too proud to fully admit his mistakes, I could tell he had come to a realization. Deep down, he knew he had failed me as a father. My mother, on the other hand, did something unexpected. She apologized. She acknowledged that she had not been there for me as a mother should have been. And while my childhood had been shaped by that neglect, I had still managed to build a fulfilling life for myself. Because of that, I saw no reason not to forgive her. By the time dinner ended, I had also helped bridge the gap between Emma and my father. For the first time in decades, our family was talking, really talking. It feels surreal to be involved in family matters after years of feeling like an outsider. The only thing that worries me now is whether this fragile peace will last. Commentary. Ash, your family is a bunch of wealthy, out-of-touch individuals who have been sitting on generational wealth with no clue how to handle real relationships. What's so bad about being raised by nannies? At least you had care and stability. Many kids aren't that lucky. It's clear that you were given enough love to turn out okay, and now you're in a financial position where you could afford 2 extravagant weddings in a row. NTA, but you should have addressed this sooner instead of bottling everything up for years. Hopefully, your family learns from this and builds healthier relationships moving forward. And on your end, you might want to work on being more open and communicative before things reach a boiling point.